And, of course, which means that, the night this happened, I've got a 7-day-old baby, my first and only child, and my in-laws, my wife's parents are out here staying with us. And I'm pretty much a homeboy. I'm not one to up and go drinking with the boys in the middle of the week. So here on a Wednesday night, after dark with a 7-year-old baby and my in-laws in town, I excuse myself and say I'm going out for the evening, which was pretty unusual. I didn't tell them where I was going or anything, but nothing would have kept me from joining everyone on that trip.
So Bob Lazar tells you when it's going to this test flight's going to take place. Sure enough, it turns out to be accurate. You see this thing. I mean, what a feeling that must have been. What a rush.
Right, it really was. And, I hear these stories occasionally. People say, that Bob, he doesn't have a degree. We can't trace it down. So if he worked out there, he must have been a cook. Well, my answer to that is if he was a cook, then they tell all the cooks when the secret test flights are going to be made on the flying saucers.
Right. I mean, it's a big point that he knew when the flights would take place, because there had been no news stories about that. There had been no discussion about it in UFO circles or UFO magazines. He knew when they'd take place, and whatever it was that was flying out there, it looked like a flying saucer, and he knew about it. So I don't know how you explain that one away.
And we didn't mistake. People go, "Oh yeah, well you probably mistook the stealth fighter or whatever." Well, John Lear probably knows a little more about jets and airplanes than anybody you'll run into walking down the street, and we didn't mistake an airplane. I mean, I think the collective knowledge there was smart enough, though, that there was no fixed-wing aircraft that we were seeing. And in fact, Jim Taliani, another mutual friend of ours, was actually working on a Tonopah test range then. He didn't have his clearance yet, but the stealth fighters were still out at TTR then, so we didn't mistake a terrestrial craft for an ET craft. That mistake did not happen.
How long was the thing in the air that you could see?
I don't know. What would you say, John? Maybe 10, 15 minutes?
Yeah, less than that, maybe 6 to 8 minutes, because I remember it was right at 9 o'clock, and then we did that videotape that they played on TV the other night, and the video camera, I think it was like 9:05 or 9:06 or something, that when we were, castigating each other, there's a video camera ready to go, and it's sitting on the bumper while we're watching, the greatest thing in history, and nobody thought to pick it up.
But it was exhilarating, though. I mean, it's hard to believe it was us. You hear this story, and it was just unbelievable.
Now, at the time, were you worried about getting caught? Was Bob worried about getting caught?
Yeah,
that first night?
We were concerned. That's what some of us had the binoculars on the disc, and others had binoculars on the desert to keep an eye on the security guys to see if anybody would come out to chase us.
Okay, so it was so much fun. He decides to do it again, right? In the next 2 weeks, you went out again. Same group, a couple slightly different group.
Okay, now the next Sunday or the next Wednesday night was March 29th, and that night I was flying with American Transair, and I had a trip to Minneapolis. So on the Tuesday night, I called Bob and I said, "What are you guys going out?" Or I said, "What are you going to do?" And he said, "We're going fishing." And so that was the secret code word. We're going up to Groom Lake.
In fact, on his calendar here, John, Wednesday the 29th, it says Jim, me, his wife, and it says fishing in parentheses underlined. That's what the entry is on Bob's calendar for that day.
So
then the third night was April 6th, and that was going to be the big night when we got, we had the Geiger counters, the video cameras, the stuff and everything, and there was me, Gene, Bob, Tracy's wife, and Tracy, and that's the night we got caught.
All right, we'll save that story for when we come back after the break, how it all went downhill, at least for Bob Lazar, and how the story eventually broke as a result. Stay with us. Our guests, John Lear and Gene Huff, on Coast to Coast AM. I'm George Knapp. Welcome back, everyone. Our guests, John Lear and Gene Huff, talking about the early days, the origins of the Area 51 story, and Bob Lazar. Let's go back, John. You were talking before the break about this third trip that the group took up. Yes?
I hate to interrupt, but I think we should step back to March 29th for a second. John was out of town and didn't go. March 29th, we went out there again, and it was myself and Bob's ex-wife, Tracy, Bob, and Jim Taliani, our mutual friend that worked out at Tonopah Test Range. And this was the night when the disc actually came the furthest, I guess, north up the mountain range where we actually got the closest look. And, of course, after not getting any video of it that first night when John was there, we had a video camera, and Bob Lazar remembered to get some video, which is the famous video that's been shown on your specials of the disc jumping around in the sky. And this was when I told the story of how unusual it is to see a craft using gravity propulsion, which I speak matter-of-factly of now. I mean, I didn't know that's what I was seeing then. I was certainly a novice speaking about any of this. But the craft would be a long way away, and like it was when we saw it the first time when John was there, the amber, I guess, colored glow sort of coming off of it, and unlike a train coming toward you on train tracks or a car on a highway, the human brain and eye is used to seeing objects move, and I guess we calculate geometrically the speed and, you know, whether it's going to intersect with us, or that's how we anticipate something coming at us. I guess it's I guess similar to an animal, you know, when to flee, when to run, when to stand and fight, and anyway, the disc you'd be looking at it and you wouldn't see it come toward you. You'd just blink, and suddenly it would be closer, and you'd go, now did that happen, or am I seeing things? And then you're still standing there looking at it, and then you'd blink, and suddenly it'd be a lot closer. And this was alarming to your mind because you didn't see it travel at any particular speed toward you. It would just jump, and suddenly it would be nearer. And to the point where it came far enough down the mountain range that it glowed very brightly. We actually backed up behind the trunk lid because it started to glow so brightly. I guess, I don't know if we thought it was going to explode or what. I mean, Bob didn't explain that was just the glow from the you know, electrical power dancing around on the static charge, I guess, on the skin of the disc. So we backed up and actually went behind the trunk lid. That's how close it came and how fearful we were of it. But that's the night Bob Lazar got the video, and that's the closest we ever did see it come down the mountain range.
Hey, okay, so after the first one and the second one, the trips out there where you saw these things, were you able to get any other information out of Bob, or was he still being kind of closed-mouthed? Did you ask him, hey, you really do work out there? How did you know about this? What are those craft? And did he get into the propulsion technology, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, he would use the old demonstration of folding a dollar bill in half and showing how they distorted space and time to travel rather than flying in a straight line in a linear mode. But, you know, he knew his phone was tapped. There were always noises on his phone. He had marital problems with his wife. I mean, he was very up and down emotionally. So, no, it wasn't a big party where you have a beer and go, now tell me about those flying saucers. It didn't happen. I mean, he let us in on that, and but it wasn't a big UFO free-for-all answering all the questions and telling us the secrets of the universe. I know that sounds strange, but that's the way it was.
And I guess the personal question would be, did it work? Did it impress? I mean, he's taken his wife out there to impress her and keep his marriage together. Did that part of it work? Was she impressed?
Well, here's the answer. On April 10th, Bob's entry in his calendar says life equals 0. So I would say no.
John, it must have been driving you crazy to have seen these things. I know what an inquisitive mind you have. You must have had a million questions for him. Were you getting answers?
Well, you know, the big night was in December. The first time we went out there was December 6th. And I came home from a trip, I think a couple days later, and I'm sitting at my desk, and he came over, and I'm just writing out some checks, and he just casually mentions, I saw a disc today. And I said, what? And he said, I saw a disc today. And I said, theirs or ours? He said, theirs. I said, well, what are you doing here? And I said, they've obviously followed you out here. They're going to find out you're telling me stuff. Why don't you work for a couple of months and then tell me? And these are his exact words. He said, no, John, he said, you've taken so much crap over this for the past few months that I've known you. I wanted to tell you that it's real. I was there. I touched it. I was in it. And it's real. And so then we spent about 2 hours talking, and he would say, he said, I can only answer questions. I can't volunteer information. Now, why he said that, I don't know, but that's exactly what he said. So,
well, part of that, John, was the security guys had found out that Bob knew John Lear, and they wanted Bob to interact with John to see if John really knew anything about the actuality of what was going on there. So while John was listening to Bob, Bob was listening to John and reporting to the security guys what John said. So that's why Bob behaved like